Hi, my name is Jody Melton. I have not personally experienced a disaster firsthand with my family or my community, but I have come in on the backside of a disaster. I was actually a part of a group that helped lead a group of teenagers to Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina. And we took about 20 teenagers that summer. And it was one of the most humbling experiences that I've ever been a part of. To see the devastation was heartbreaking, but what we got to do was come in on the backside and help rebuild homes for people that had lost their house. One thing we did that week was we got to drive around the city. It was still so very empty and so sad to see what was lost. But I will never forget. I can still see it in my mind today. I will never forget driving through the area across the street from we were working. The houses that we were working on were now in a gated community, but across the street from that literally were houses that were completely destroyed, but they had spray paint on their house, and it was spray paint for the search and rescue teams to know if everyone had gotten out of the house, or if they had found anyone dead, or if they had found any animals, or literally it had the number of people that were rescued. It had the number that were found dead. And I still remember having conversations with our teenagers about just seeing that and what that did, even for our students that were with us on that trip. Now, the cool thing was is that we got to build some homes for some people, and we finished one of the homes. And as we were finishing that home that week, that organization that we were working with, the family that was going to get that home had to spend so many hours working on the house. And so while we were there, they were working with us alongside of us, and they got to share their story of what they experienced and what they saw and how they felt. And so it was so heartbreaking to hear that from them. But it was also very rewarding that they would share their story with us. And again, we've never seen or heard from these people ever again, but we got to just go in and help rebuild a new home for them to start their life over. And so I think of that definition of collective trauma, a blow to the basic tissue of social life that damages the bonds attaching people together and impairs the prevailing sense of community. And I just think, as a therapist sitting with a client that has just experienced trauma, I have to be incredibly flexible and patient and kind and empathetic, because so much of the world has been turned upside down. I may only have a short time with them. And so I have to be able to develop rapport quickly with each person that I get to sit down with. So demonstrating congruence and empathetic understanding is a way to build that rapport quickly. And so reflective listening is another way to do that with someone that has just experienced trauma. I think I would say something along the lines to the person that I just sat down with after I've introduced myself, of just talking through how their community and their social life is one big connection. But when a disaster happens, it's almost like a gut punch to that community and that web of connections that we have, and it breaks. Those connections are broken between people and the community, and it makes it harder for everyone to feel a part of that close-knit community, because that web of connections has been broken by the disaster. And so the disaster shakes things up, and it can be tough to feel close to those that we were before. But I would remind them that over time, there will be people that come in and work alongside of them and rebuild, and those connections in the community can be rebuilt. And it actually makes the community stronger. It just takes so much effort and time to heal, and people coming together. The stress, what kind of impact a disaster could have on someone's mental well-being it can vary. It can have a profound impact, but it also depends on the individual and the severity of the disaster and the level of support that they receive, and on even their pre-existing mental health conditions. It can cause post-traumatic stress disorder, which can come back which can show up as in flashbacks and nightmares and anxiety and intrusive thoughts. And they can extend for a short period, or they can significantly impact that person's life. It can show up in anxiety and depression, survivor's guilt. Why did my house get wiped away when my neighbors did not? And that's not fair. And that causes more emotional stress and self-blame, but also grief and loss. People just lost everything they had. They may have lost loved ones. And so that grief and mourning is an appropriate response in this season. And then it can even cause social isolation. It can disrupt your connections and your support system, and so that you really do feel lonely, which then can affect your mental well-being as well. For kiddos, they can also experience all of these mental health issues as well, nightmares and separation anxiety. And according to the article, adolescent risk substance use behavior, post-traumatic stress, depression, and resilience, childhood exposure to disasters can lead to long-term psychological distress and even an increased risk in substance abuse in the future. I can also feel for people that their sense of safety has been shattered. The disaster itself can lead to so much fear about future events. However, many show remarkable resilience and recover with the support of their communities, family, friends, and their mental health professionals. And so the recovery process has a number of stages. And so when do these people that experience a disaster need a counselor? When do they not? But the stages are the heroic phase, the honeymoon phase, the disillusionment phase, and the reconstruction phase. And all of these phases, varying on the individual, can lead to needing a mental health professional to walk alongside of them. The heroic phase is when the responses are great, and the clients can also respond with high emotions like shock or dismay. But then the counselors can respond to trying to help the client see the overall picture, but also pace themselves to respond in the disaster. The heroic phase, sometimes for the clients that experience this, are trying to run and fix and do all the things, and their emotions are so high that they then get wiped out faster. And so the counselor can help pace and kind of help guide and set some markers on things to do day by day. And then the honeymoon phase, the compassion and relief are expressed and high, and the community is coming together. People are still coming together to help. And so even though that is happening, for some, they still feel like they're all alone in this. So counselors can be needed then. The disillusionment phase, the resources and the attention start to feel like they have ended. The counselors may need to step in and help people that are hit by disasters, to let them know that they're still being cared for, but their community that experienced this disaster is trying to get back to a normal phase of life after the disaster has hit. And this phase can also just feel like a roller coaster and have triggers along the ways. It's a very up and down phase in the recovery process. And then the reconstruction phase, this one can last a long time and can be present after the disaster for a very long time as well. The counselor can be used for a long time after the disaster because of how the disaster affects each person differently, working through grief, coming to terms with the situations and the setbacks, but also knowing at the same time there's a new beginning. And so understanding that that may be even in the reconstruction phase, where it feels like things are getting so much better, people still may need a counselor along the way. And so in my response, I referenced the adolescent risk of substance use behavior, post-traumatic stress, depression, and resilience article, Lancaster's trauma and crisis counselor preparation, and then Miller's book, The Fundamentals of Crisis Counseling. Thanks.